Instructional Designers in Offices Drinking Coffee is brought to you by Domino, makers of Domino One, the all-in-one, cloud-based e-learning authoring tool for teams. You can learn more at domino.com. Now, here's this week's episode.
I just saw that. Dang it. Oh, man. Well, for those of you folks in the chat who have been hanging out with us for a long time, you may remember trombones. That was... When was that, Kara?
Back in the day.
There we go. Thank you very much. How's the weather, everybody? Looks like we got some thunderstorms and crazy action going on in Columbus, Ohio. Holy smokes.
And how do we know that, Brent?
Well, because we have a guest today, and I think you're going to give us a little bit of an introduction. Who's hanging out with us?
Gang, we have Kara North back with us. Kara, it's been like a little while since you were with us the last time.
2019. Can you believe it's been that long?
Really?
Yeah.
Where you been?
Around.
I guess so, right? Where have we been?
Feeling really guilty.
No, don't feel guilty. Sorry, I didn't mean to feel guilty.
So, given that it's been a bit of a while, introduce yourself to the folks in the crowd who joined us today, who may not have met you yet.
Sure. So, hi everybody. I am Kara North. I'm located in Columbus, Ohio, and I am currently a freelance consultant. I have my own company called The Learning Camel, and so we are with you for the long haul. I always get asked why I named my company The Learning Camel, and in jest, I always say we spit knowledge at you, but that's not actually accurate. We're with you for the long haul. We really care about the journey of the content and the learning experiences that we create. Before I went freelance, I've worked in several different industries. I spent some time in higher education, spent some time in corporate, and then I also had a little kind of side hustle freelance, which I'm sure we're going to be talking about more today on how to get started with that. And yeah, I'm a proud pet parent. My cat's name is Bib Fortuna, and yeah, I just love the work that we get to do in this space. I mean, it's pretty powerful that we're in the people business and we can be part of someone's success, and that's something I don't take very lightly.
Very cool. So when you were looking for the name for your business, I'm assuming that the Learning Dromedary URL was probably taken. Is that why you settled on Camel or?
No, I don't know. Like, it's always one of those really weird exercises to figure out what to call yourself. And so there's, cases to be made of, do you use your name? Well, what's interesting about my name, North is, I took my partner's last name when I got married. But if you were to Google my name, there's also a romance novelist with the same name as me. So I didn't want to get confused with that with my business. And so it was important for me to think of a name for kind of the consulting side of the business. And it ended up landing at The Learning Camel.
Yeah. But I mean, it gives you an obvious visual right away too, that people hear it are not probably going to forget it, as opposed to, something, I don't know, less evocative anyway. And I think automatically I'm dozens and dozens of branding ideas. I mean, camels everywhere, right? So
can I hire you, Chris?
I think it's interesting because I think I'm just thinking of myself. The only other Brent Schlenker is a fly fishing real estate agent in Montana. And Yeah, it's been, and he has BrentSchlenker.com, and I've been reaching out to him for several years now because he retired. And so, yeah, he doesn't need it anymore, but he won't give it up. And then Kevin Thorne, the only other Kevin Thorne, if you Google Kevin Thorne, is a professional wrestler. So, yeah, your point hits right at home because if you use your name in your business, yeah, it can. You got to look into that first.
Well, and someday your business might be more than just you too, right? So potentially, so you think about something potentially that you can grow into as well, or have as a different presence as things evolve, for sure. Yeah,
indeed.
There are actually surprisingly there are a few Chris Van Wingertons elsewhere in the world too. Most in the Netherlands, it's very freaky to find that.
It's like Smith in the Netherlands, right?
Not quite, no, but still. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's tip 1. Google your name first and think of a different way to brand your personal freelancing side gig. And that's what we're talking about today for those of you who haven't quite figured it out yet, maybe didn't read the email, haven't clicked on the little I for information button up at the top of the screen. But Kara has done a presentation on this and put a lot of time into thinking about it besides actually becoming a freelancer. And so I'm super psyched for today's conversation as we go past just one big tip. And while we're chatting, folks, let me just give the chat room a shout out and let all of you guys know. I'm sure there's a bunch of you in there that either want to be freelancers or already are. And any tips you guys have, just start dropping them into the chat. You guys can help the conversation along, and we will riff off of that as we go. But Kara's probably got a few things lined up for us. What would be number 2 if we were going to go down that numbering road?
Sure. So I think after you kind of figure out, the naming convention, maybe it's something that you actually think about or whatever. A couple tips is you might want to do searches to see what's already taken. So Brent, your comment about the guy that has the domain name of your name, like that's a good thing to check out before you kind of go all in. But especially as you get started on kind of what I call a side hustle, I always like to say you need to consider the cost. And when I talk about the cost, I'm not talking about just the cost of your equipment, your software, whatever, but the most precious resource, I believe, on planet Earth is your time. And your time is something you can't get a refund on. And so when you often take maybe your first, second, third freelance client, you're often doing this work before work, after work, weekends, and you really have to consider, like, what is the cost of this from my family, my friends, whatever. Now, luckily, I have a very patient and loving partner, but, if I were, like, for example, where I am in my life now, it would be much harder for me to take on a lot of freelance clients if I still working full time versus, kind of where I was in the beginning of my career. Because the last couple roles that I had in corporate America was at a leadership level, which is way more daunting than just an individual contributor because you have to deal with everyone's messes. And so by the end of the day, my brain was just baby food. And I could not even think about taking on another project at the end of the day versus when I was, spry and, individual contributor and like churning out all kinds of stuff. I had all this pent up energy and I was like, bring it on, so I think that is something that you really need to think about. But then another piece of this too, is even if you are freelancing or side hustling, ultimately, at the end of the day, you are a business. And so with that, there are a couple of different things you need to think about. One, people are going to talk about you. You take someone's money, they're going to tell others if you did a good job, if you didn't do a good job. And with that criticism, sometimes it's, not warranted. You may disagree with it. And the way that you conduct yourself is the tone of your business. So you really have to take yourself kind of out of it and think of yourself as a business when you do this. And I will tell you, I have developed extremely thick skin over the years that I've been doing this. I had a client one time, not pay me at all. And that dealing with that was very difficult. And they had twisted it to where I thought it was my fault until I seeked kind of counsel from other people. And they're like, no, this is not normal. You shouldn't have, been in that position. So I say that not to scare anybody, but I really want people to think about the scope of it. It's not just signing up, turning your light on if you're like a self-checkout person, right? And say, I'm open for business. You really need to sit down and think about these considerations of, is it going to be worth the time that I'm going to be taking away from other things that I have going on in my life? Do I have that balance? And then can I handle when someone doesn't pay me, talks bad about me, or whatever?
Yeah, I think to kind of dial us back just a little bit, it just dawned on me, before even anybody starts thinking about your name, you got to start thinking about what you do. And maybe we could just touch on that a little bit, because our understanding what you do and what you offer. I mean, it's easy for us in our industry to just say, yeah, I do e-learning, or I'm an instructional designer, right? But we all know it means different things to different companies, to different people, and all that kind of stuff. And I think one of the things that I've noticed throughout the years with freelancers is that need to really pinpoint and target something. It's very tempting to say, oh, I just do everything because I've got such a wide, range of skills and things in the background and my experiences, and I can author and I can do instructional design and all that kind of stuff. And, it's not always that easy. Like dialing in, if you talk to people outside of our industry, the first thing they'll tell you is you got to narrow your focus. What do you do? They'll say, and you tell them, and they'll be like, no, you got to narrow that down. And you're like, oh, okay. And then they'll say, no, you got to narrow it down some more. Like, you got to pick one thing and you got to hit that. And that's hard.
It's very hard.
Have you thought about that? Is there a particular niche that you're going down, and how did you get there?
Yeah. So just to kind of circle back, I promise this will come around. But, when I was a hiring manager, one thing that my litmus test of trying to select candidates for interviews was, I saw so many people do what I call the alphabet soup on their resume. Oh, I can do all these e-learning authoring tools, and I can do this and I can do that. And then you get over their portfolio, you see none of it. Right. And so to me, that's an immediate nope. Your resume is telling me what you can do. Your portfolio is showing me what you can do. And there needs to be alignment there. If there's not, it's a problem. So, knowing that and knowing how much that annoyed me as a hiring manager, I knew I didn't want to do that when I was kind of, developing, the business. So, I've really thought more about kind of the pillars of what I like to do. So, and I'll say I operate on 3 pillars. One pillar is what I call workforce development, meaning I want people in your organizations to grow with your organizations. We've seen a big shift of people leaving organizations because they don't feel valued, they don't feel like they can move up, etc. And so the work that I've kind of done throughout my career in, building out career pathing, or helping companies build out different courses about learning about their profession. I have one client that does assistive technology. And the cool thing about assistive technology is they're a lot like instructional designers. A lot of them fell into it. And so this is a profession where a lot of people are aging out, and they're wanting to get the word out that this is a great profession to get into. And they're wanting to build out kind of these career pathway courses to let people know what to expect if this is a career path that they're wanting to do. So workforce development is kind of my first pillar. I love it. My second pillar is what I call cleanup squad. And so I like to work with clients who maybe didn't get the results that they wanted, or, maybe don't really kind of know what they need. And so another part of the work that I like to do is just get in there and get to know what they need and talk to them and really kind of dive in a little bit. So I had another potential discovery call a couple of weeks ago. and they were talking to me about they wanted to roll out this nutrition training. They were a nursing home, and they said, we had a patient that got a banana and they shouldn't have got a banana, and so now we need mandatory nutrition training. And I said, what happened? They said, what do you mean? I said, well, has anybody talked to the person that gave the person the banana? And they just looked at me and they're like, no, somebody told me we need to build training, so that's why we're contacting you. And I said, but training's not going to fix the problem until you know what the problem is, why somebody gave someone a banana. So I like doing kind of those things. And then 3, the other big one is kind of assessment and evaluation. So, I've really spent a lot of time thinking about, what's it mean to actually know something, and how can we support people kind of on their mastery journey. And so I really like to work on projects that focus on how can people actually practice before they need to do what they need to do. So often it's, take this e-learning and, if you need it in a month, well, hopefully your little filing cabinet in the back of your brain works, right? So I don't know if that was helpful or not, but those are kind of the 3 pillars of the projects that I work on. If I get something else that in my pipeline that isn't a good fit, that's actually dovetails into my 3rd tip for freelancing is making partnerships with other freelancers. You can't do everything. And so I actually made, here, I'll share it real quick. It's very scientific and very, special here, but I have a little Venn diagram here of what this looks like. But essentially, you have work that you don't want to do, and someone else has work that they don't want to have to do. And then there's an overlap of work that needs an owner. So you can often make partnerships with other consultants, agencies, etc., to kind of swap on some of the things that you have. And then the nice part about this is you make partnerships. You can, kind of grow your own learning about different things. But I think that other people who are freelancers are certainly not competition. I look at them as partners.
Yeah. As you're talking here, a model that's popping into my brain is like the construction industry, right? You know what you're good at. So you become, you're working your own business. You're in framing maybe, or maybe you're doing roofing or whatever. Nobody in that business really decides to become a general contractor, I don't think, immediately. You start somewhere and then it builds, and suddenly, but a big part of that growth is probably that also along the way you have built those partnerships. So that you've got electricians and plumbers, et cetera, other trades, other skill sets, that you trust and can bring in order to deliver the end result of a house for someone, for example. But it's very rare that anybody has all of that stuff to begin with, and in that realm, everybody expects that there will be other sub trades or et cetera, coming and going. And you can think of that. I think it's a kind of a useful metaphor maybe for this idea of freelancing in our own space, that, hey, this is what I do, but I also have these people that, when we need them or whatever, bringing that all together. Cool.
Yeah, and I can share from personal experience that trying to do all of it never works. It never works at all. Some of the best projects that have finished, on time, on budget, and successful were the ones that had a project manager, somebody focused on video, somebody else focused on authoring, somebody else focused on illustration, interface design, and somebody else focused on content and all that kind of stuff. And it's to experience that is really kind of cool. Those types of projects that have the kind of budget that can afford that large of a team to focus don't come along all that often. But if you ever have the opportunity to be a part of something like that, even if it feels daunting or for whatever reason you don't want to take it, I would encourage everybody to experience that at least once. Because when you're a freelancer, it's very tempting to try to do everything, because then all the money and all the, the glory and the fame comes to you, right? It's like, oh, wow, that's a pretty fat payday. I'm going to try to get this done all by myself, And it never ends up working out like that. So,
and you're failing your clients. I mean, why do you want to do something kind of haphazardly, right? You really want to shine in the work that you're the best at, right? So why do you not want to kind of bring in kind of, I'm going to call that all-star experience for every facet of the project? I mean, truly, if you do that, you're serving your clients very well. So that's another great way of looking at it too. You want the absolute best for them. So why would you want to stumble through building something if that's not your jam?
Yeah. And some really awesome comments in the chat going on here. So Connie was mentioning the narrower the focus, the more you become the expert at that one thing. And that's a positive because you can have that, that you can leverage that and focus it, especially if that's the thing you're passionate about. If it happens that you're good at it and you like it, right? And Jack's thrown in a couple of other points here too. Partnerships have helped grow my business and meet my business goals. And Lightbulb Joe's throwing in, people will come to you as they trust you, and then you can pass on to people that you trust, and you can offer more. So, building out your network, having your collection of trustworthy colleagues, etc. To fill all of the gaps, etc. Yeah.
Indeed. All right, let's move on to the next tip.
All right. Another tip is slightly controversial, but maybe not. But I have a saying: if it's free, it's for me. Okay. So back when the pandemic hit, there was an opportunity for me to speak at a conference. It was done here on Crowdcast, and it was one of the first virtual only learning development conferences. So I was invited to speak at it. I said yes. I did a presentation, and in the audience of that first conference was someone who ended up being my biggest client. And so they would have never found me if they weren't in that audience, and they reached out, and I still have a relationship with this client, and they've been a tremendous client to work with. So if I would have said no to that opportunity, I may have not gotten that business. Same with a couple of my clients when I went full-time freelance, came to me because they've seen me speak at conferences that I likely didn't get paid for my time, but from a networking perspective and then from a thought leadership perspective, it's obviously paid dividends, because when I announced that I was going freelance, I had so much interest. I was just blown away. And I think that really speaks to the power of, paying it forward and, making sure that you are also in charge of your own learning and growing as well, because often people say, oh, well, I'm a lifelong learner. Well, great. How are you a lifelong learner? Oh, well, I just say that I am. No, that's not good enough. And really for me, why I like speaking at different places, Idiotic or wherever, right? Is it gives you an opportunity to get feedback. And when you get feedback, that's how you learn and grow. So I'm always open to feedback for anything that I kind of put out there, but it makes me better. And even, to your point earlier, Chris, the comments in the chat, I love reading the comments in the chat because I'm learning along with people, right? They're giving me advice and sharing their perspectives as well. And isn't that what it's all about? So I encourage you. I know it's very scary to get started speaking, been there, done that. I actually have a slight stutter, and it's something that I've worked through. I joined Toastmasters, and it really helped me deal with it much better. And so if you can hear my voice right now, I'm telling you that you're good enough to speak, because you have experiences that can be valuable to the community. No matter if you are brand new, you have the advantage of seeing things with fresh eyes. So maybe you might bring up questions or perspectives that, someone that's been in it for a while may not see. Regardless of what you've done, you have value that you can share and bring.
For sure. Yeah. Lightbulb Joe threw a follow-up comment. Agree. There's a great point about some conferences paying speakers when they are charging money. But as a freelancer small business, I see these speaking events as my marketing. It might not cost me actual money, but it does cost time. But as Kara says, it pays dividends and allows us to pay it back and forward, for sure.
Yep, and you're right, Kara. I don't think anybody here will say that it was controversial, but there are those people out there who say if nobody pays me for my time, I'm not going to do it. But I think um, remuneration, I believe is the word, comes in many different forms. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the form of money to make it worth your time and to pay you. So, like you said, getting a gig, meeting people, expanding your network. I mean, there's investing in your own personal marketing, like Joe says, is absolutely part of this idea of becoming a freelancer, and building that company. And that's hard work. And maybe I know we've got another, tip or two down the line, but maybe we can sidetrack for a second here and just talk a little bit about that time constraint, because I think a lot of what people get frustrated with is like that balance, right? How much time do I put into building the business, doing the accounting, doing the invoicing, making the phone calls, trying to get new clients versus doing the actual work? I think that's probably the hardest part. I mean, I know you've done freelancing in the past, but have you kind of figured that out for yourself yet?
Work in progress. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I have all the answers for everything. One thing that was really important to me when I transitioned to full time, and I shared this story with Chris and Brent in the green room, is one of the reasons that I have went freelance is the last organization that I worked at had a big layoff, and I had some signs that I thought it was coming, and so I said I'm getting out of here before it gets bad. So when that happened, a lot of people that I worked with and respect and are just wickedly talented lost their jobs, and I was very sad for them. So what I'm trying to do is, and this isn't completely done yet, it's in the process, is a couple of my former colleagues are working with me right now because they have talents to give. And, obviously I can't be a full-time employer for them yet, but at least it's something to help them get to their next opportunity. Plus, they are curious, they have a lot of energy and passion. So, one person has some event management experience, so they're going to help me figure out, if I do a webinar strategy of doing webinars kind of on my own. Another one I'm convinced can absolutely move mountains, and so that person, no matter what it is, she gets it done, whatever I ask her to do. So leveraging again my network, being able to pay it forward and provide a little bit of income to people that I know were impacted by a horrible event. To me, that's what it's all about, and I'm really happy and proud that I'm able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jack drops a great point in the chat room. Outsource accounting as early as you can. I'm going to go ahead and second that. Unless for some strange reason you actually, are into accounting and can do that. But in my experience in our industry, we are a collection of creatives. And I don't think I know any creative who says, what I really love to do is the accounting.
Yeah. Going back to the accounting part, one thing that we didn't really touch on, but something you need to think about as you're, starting your business is, and this is not legal advice. Let me put that out there, but you need to consider the advantages of being an LLC versus an S corp versus, other options. And so, for me, I set up an LLC because it was convenient and easy in the state of Ohio that I'm in. It was $99 in a form that I filled out. And then once I got that from the state, then they sent that to me. I was able to apply to get a tax ID number. And then that tax ID number is what I give, my clients for billing purposes. And then, that way I'm able to track that money so it didn't come into the same kind of bucket of taxes as my income from my full-time job. But again, that's not saying that's what you have to do, just saying that's what I did. Your mileage may vary and your needs may vary based on your individual situation.
Mhm. So there's a couple of comments about insurance, which is actually not something that I've never freelanced really, so it's not something that I thought of. And what's been your experience with that, Kara?
Yeah, I have it. I have personal liability insurance in the event that it hits the fan and it's going down. There was a time when I was working that, things that kept me up at night was, you know, could someone get harmed in our company in a healthcare space of getting the wrong medication, or when I was in manufacturing, could someone, get seriously injured or hurt someone else in the factory that I was supporting. So it's different when you're full-time employed, but then thinking about, where these things end up, what will happen, I've often found that anytime anything goes wrong, the first person blamed is training. So to me, it's really critical to just have that extra security in case that happens. You don't want to think that it does, but I've often found the times that I don't plan for something is when it happens. Murphy's Law loves our industry so much, right? So it's just an extra thing to keep my mind a little bit safe if something were to happen.
Yeah, and I guess just it's probably become pretty obvious, but without putting too fine a point on it, there is some upfront investments
Yes.
in going freelance. And so if you've got a job currently, this is one of the reasons why people always say start the process while you have a job, if at all possible, so that you can do these little things spaced out over time and you're not strapped at the last minute needing to come up with a few $1,000 to get everything in order. And all of that. But that's not really where I wanted to go in today's conversation, right? I wanted to kind of keep it high level, not a whole lot of details, because there's a lot of resources people can go to out there and get it. And one of the pitches I'll just make to wherever you're at, I'm sure Canada has it. I'm sure the UK has it, but the small business associations, there's in the US, there's the National Small Business Bureau, whatever you can go to, but every state has one too. And your local chamber of commerce is a great place to go. And trying to think, there is one nonprofit association that has like former CEOs and former executives that offer their time and will help coach you along and talk you through a process, and also hit up your local community college. They have free resources, or your university, wherever you went to. If you graduated from a university as an alumni, you probably still have free resources available to you, even if it was, 30 years ago.
Would you say back in the day?
Wait, why didn't that work?
Oh.
Dang it, I hit the button just in time too, and it didn't make the noise.
We're waiting.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, man.
Okay. No snare drum. There it is.
There it is.
Better late than never, people.
Yeah, we managed to work it in. Yeah. Good. Jennifer was mentioning in the chat, Karen, I saw you did reply in the chat too, but building a formal business plan, which isn't actually something we've talked about, things that maybe touch upon the idea of some aspects of a business plan. But what was your experience, from that perspective as you were?
Yeah, it was wonderful. So,
Cool.
where I live, there's a local women economic development resource that is open, and they walk you through kind of your whole business development planning, and it was a fantastic experience. A couple things, not to go back down a rabbit hole, what Brent was talking about earlier about, getting started, the cost of it, whatever, a couple things that they had brought in to light when I was building it out was one, checking your employment contract to see if you can actually do this. There are some organizations that may say it's a conflict of interest, and being very careful with that. Luckily, when I started this, I was still working at the university, and the university was actually fairly liberal with kind of those policies, which was good. Another one, going back to kind of the cost, is, and this is a mountain I'm willing to die on, is I do not think that it's morally or ethically the right thing to use equipment your employer provides you for your side hustle. I got in a couple heated conversations on LinkedIn about that, people that disagree with me about that, but ultimately your employer owns that. And so I think that that's, kind of poor form. And if you are not in a position to where you can pay for that, maybe it's something you need to work up towards, or, save some money to get that. Cause I feel very passionately that you shouldn't do that, because, using like some e-learning authoring tools or something, depending on the way that it's set up, your employer can often see what you do in those tools. And, that's not a good conversation that you want to have. And that also too, that puts you on a wrong footing in getting this off the ground, right? You want to always, I believe, do the right thing. And that's one thing that I've had a conversation with a couple of the other folks that I know do this is, you would be surprised how doing what you say you're going to do and just following through will get you more clients. I know that sounds simple, but there are just so many people that bite off more than they can chew, or put their head in the sand like the ostrich or something. But, being consistent, telling them, yes, I will do this on this date, blah, 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 that will get you probably more clients than you could probably handle.
Yeah. It's
building
true.
out your reputation, right? Yeah, for sure. So we're talking, 5 tips. Have we covered all 5 of your tips, Kara, or are there any left that you've got?
I had 2 more because I wasn't expecting talking about the business being tip 1, but that's okay. My 4th tip would be iterations. And so knowing that, you're probably never going to have a perfect project. If you actually have a perfect project, I'd love to hear about it. I certainly never had a perfect project, but knowing that, there's going to be lessons learned along the way. So one thing I like to do is I like to kind of keep like this tally or tracker of the project of like, hey, on this day, I had problems with this, and this is how I fixed it, or whatever. So you have kind of this living document of kind of these issues and problems that you've overcame. And then the nice thing is you can kind of go back and look back and laugh. I had a financial client that we had this horrible Excel that I just could not fix the blasted thing. And it took me, I don't know how long to do it. But now looking back, it was so simple. Like I was in my own head so much, right? So keeping that like a tally of the kind of lessons learned, I think is really powerful. Again, as you're growing and maturing in your business, I think it's really important to keep those lessons learned.
Very cool.
That's a good one.
Yeah, because it's so easy to get sort of the stress and the negativity, but being able to at least reflect on the fact that, hey, this is part of it, and we can climb this mountain, and having that record, keeping that in your conscious memory rather than just having it fade out and only the negative experience of that being the color that you remember from that experience. It's a good way to keep yourself rolling forward. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just toss in too. A lot of times, just because of economic downturns, whatever reason for your organization being downsized or you're leaving, even if you plan it and structure it, sometimes in the best of employment circumstances, you can even talk to your employer or your manager about what you're doing, and they will support you and help you go through that process. They'll say, all right, let's take a year. In that year, you work on your side hustle, but help us find your replacement or whatever, or finish up this project before the end of the year or whatever. And then a lot of times your former employer can also be your anchor client, and they'll still send you work. You're just doing it freelance and you're contracting with them. I know a lot of freelancing consulting businesses that have been started that way as well. So don't count out your current employer ever. Start there. You've already got the relationships and all that. So anyways, all right, let's go to number 5. I just wanted to toss that in.
Sure. Number 5, super simple, pay it forward. We have a really awesome, I think, collective of people that do this work. When you're at a position where you can help others, whether it's just advice, encouragement, whatever, pay it forward. I certainly wouldn't be where I am today without the time and talents of really nice people, Brent, including yourself, right? So pay it forward and really think about how you can kind of nurture and encourage the next generation of learning and development professionals.
Mm-hmm. We are, by nature, those of us in this space, the vast majority of us, helpful people. We, the work that we do, we value it because we know that it helps, that it can help, produce change, has an effect on people's lives, and hopefully in a positive way. And yeah, taking that outside of the work, but then spreading that around, whether that's at conferences or just in, in networking, et cetera. Very cool. Yeah, important thing to think about.
Yeah, nothing cooler than seeing that light bulb go off, right? That's why everybody that becomes teachers. And then if you naturally roll into the corporate space afterwards, it's the same thing, except, then we do the e-learning, and it's fun to see people learn stuff, or maybe you make videos and it's fun to see people say, wow, I learned so much just watching your video or hearing you talk at a conference, right? All that kind of stuff. It's, makes us feel good, and that's always the big bonus.
One final question that's in the question panel here, which is, at first, do you let your clients know you also have a full-time job doing the same work, but you work on their stuff in your off time? That's an interesting one, because you want them to make sure that they feel that they're being, they're getting the attention that they need, et cetera, and the project's not just something casual, et cetera. But at the same time, you do have to manage those expectations too. What's your thoughts on that one, Kara?
Yeah, I think it depends on how you slice or dice it. If it's a deliverable based project, maybe you can say I can dedicate, 10 hours a week or something, just being upfront about that. I've never, when I was still full-time employed, never had a client bat an eyelash about it, because I was just upfront and say, listen, from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., I'm off limits, 4:30 p.m. to 10 p.m., I'm all yours, setting those expectations. And again, the big one, following through and doing what you're saying you're going to do is really, really critical. So yeah, I think just setting those expectations, they understand. I mean, you are contracting, you're not necessarily their, what I call employee, right? So you definitely have a little bit more autonomy and freedom with your time, but just be honest and forthright.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah.
And as we were chatting, one more question just tossed in, and we probably ought to, this be a good one to maybe close on. How do you get over the fear of exiting your corporate job and leaving that safety net?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll tell you, my first couple gigs that I did was I subcontracted for a freelancer. So just to kind of get my feet wet, I started with even doing QA of e-learning. I wrote up like different little metadata stuff. So I did a little bit of everything just to get comfortable doing the work. And that was a really nice way to kind of dip my toe in. And then once I built my confidence up with that, then I felt confident kind of going and doing projects on my own. But I think just having those conversations with people and say, hey, if you're looking and to kind of offload something, let me know to kind of get me started. You'd probably be surprised how much potential work that you'll probably find just by asking that.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Indeed. And it is not as easy as people think, but more fun than you might imagine. So I would encourage everybody to at least give it a shot and at least, get out there and give it a try and see what you think. We'd love to hear how you do too. If anybody has any resources they'd like to drop into the chat, now's a great time to do it.
For sure. There's Kara's info. If anybody's looking to connect with Kara, she just tossed her contact info into the chat too. Yeah. And folks, don't forget it. Our time here at Idiotic is sponsored by Domino Learning Systems. So if you're interested in learning more about Domino and Domino One, I just threw a link into the chat there for that. Brent has tossed in the link to the LinkedIn group. The link to the LinkedIn group. That almost sounds like horses galloping or something. Funny where your brain goes, eh? Join us there though, because we do have lots of stuff that happens in that LinkedIn session or in that LinkedIn group there, keeping the ideas rolling. Kara, thanks so much for joining us this week. It's awesome.
Thanks for having me. Missed you all.
Yeah.
So good to be back.
Bye, gang.
Adios, everybody.